Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everyone joining us online and here in person at the ASU California Center Broadway at the historic Herald Examiner building in downtown Los Angeles. With great respect, Zócalo Public Square acknowledges the Yuhaviatum, the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory of Yangna that we now know as downtown Los Angeles. We honor their elders, past and present, and the Yuhaviatum descendants who are part of the Gabrieleño Tongva and the Fernandeño Tataviam nations. We recognize that the Tongva are still here, and we are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. As Kuyam, we recognize our responsibility and obligation to care for their land. I'm Sarah Suarez, and I'm the Senior Manager of Programs and Operations at Zócalo Public Square, a unit of Arizona State University Media Enterprise. At Zócalo, our mission is to connect people to ideas and to each other. Everything we do is free, and everyone is welcome. We publish original writing, and we present conversations like this one. You can find us at zocalopublicsquare.org, on podcast platforms, and YouTube, so please subscribe for our latest programs. We were founded in 2003, and we're now celebrating our 20th birthday year. We are honored to co-present tonight's program with Destination Crenshaw, with generous support from Supervisor Holly Mitchell and Akieva and Martin Jacobs. I'll now turn it over to Natasha Moaz from Destination Crenshaw.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. I want to welcome you all to the space and say hello to everyone online this evening. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Natasha Moaz. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Grants with Destination Crenshaw. Before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit of a background of who we are. Destination Crenshaw's mission is to honor Black triumphs, Black futures, and celebrate Black presence by boosting Crenshaw Boulevard, the spine of Black Los Angeles. Through economic development, job creation, and environmental healing, while commemorating the historic legacy and future aspirations of local artists and culture. Destination Crenshaw is transforming a 1.3-mile stretch of Crenshaw Boulevard from an area of long-standing economic investment and strategic urban planning into a thriving commercial corridor linking both architecturally stunning community spaces, pocket parks, hundreds of newly planted trees, and over time, over 100 different artists. We are excited to join together with Zócalo Public Square to present a series of programming called What Connects Us. That's why we're all here tonight. You know, what connects us? Leading this discussion, opening tonight's conversation with our panelists, ask the question, is car culture the ultimate act of community in Crenshaw? I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, my friend and coworker, Heather Heslup. She's our Director of Public Art with Destination Crenshaw. She is a creative professional specializing in strategic planning, project management, and organizational development. She's a passionate advocate for our education, equity, and social justice with nearly 15 years of experience in nonprofit management, working to center the arts, cultural responsiveness, equity, and leveraging strategic partners for positive and lasting community change. It's with a great pleasure and honor that I introduce Heather. Heather, over to you.
Good evening. Thank you, Natasha. My name is Heather Heslup. I'm the Director of Public Art Programs for Destination Crenshaw, and I'm extremely pleased to be the moderator for tonight's conversation and very honored to introduce our guests for today. I'm going to make sure I read these bios correctly because these are amazing people. Charles Dickson is a self-taught artist, sculptor, and designer born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. Dickson's public artwork career spans decades. and can be found throughout Southern California. His sculpture, Wishing on a Star, proudly anchors the front of California African American Museum here in Los Angeles. And Dickson's creative process is based on an expansive multi-material practice and a desire to impart life into inanimate objects. He works with wood, concrete, metal, bronze, glass, acrylic, and more. If a material is not malleable, he invents his own tools and techniques to shape it. His work reflects the oneness of the universe, that we are all one part of one creation. Welcome, Charles. And this lovely gentleman next to me is Larry Earl, Jr. He's the lead historian for Destination Crenshaw and the founder of 1619 Exhibits, an arts consulting firm that designs distinctive exhibitions and activates public spaces. His portfolio of clients include the Kinsey African American Art and History Collection, the New York Historical Society, and the National Portrait Gallery. With over 3 decades of experience in the museum field, Larry has held executive positions at some of our nation's preeminent cultural institutions, including the Houston Museum of African American Culture. Larry currently resides in Leimert Park, a neighborhood of the Crenshaw District, with his wife and daughter. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you all. I want to remind our audience that we'll have a portion for questions toward the end of this conversation. And if you're watching online, you can add your questions to our online portal through YouTube. With that, let's get started. Let's get into it.
Yeah,
let's get into it. So as my colleague Natasha mentioned earlier, Destination Crenshaw is really established to celebrate and uplift Black culture here in LA. And our ultimate goal is cultural and community perseverance, or preservation, I should say, through arts and culture. So my question to you both is, what makes Black LA's arts and culture scene so unique? What's unique about the Black arts and culture scene here in LA?
First of all, the whole process of creating images and elements of icons that Black communities can embrace and be empowered with is very important. It's like putting a new sidewalk in or something like that, or just establishing that they're important within their community and that they're being reflected that way.
Yeah.
Everybody in LA is a star. Have you seen what Charles walked out here?
The leather?
You see this leather? This is fly, right?
That's true.
This is everybody in LA is a star. And when you think about, the African American experience in LA, you really are talking about what America sees on view, and that understanding of that aesthetically. We talk about how Black LA exists as a middle class, as a place for entrepreneurship, for Black entrepreneurship, for political power, for arts cultivation. Black folks in LA are generally at the forefront of that. And so if you take a city like LA, where everyone is a star, and Hollywood can make you forget, however, about the struggle, about the history, about the many, many people that make Black LA unique. So preserving the space and reminding people the history like Destination Crenshaw is extremely important.
Yeah. You went right into my next question, like, why is it important? Why is preserving and remembering the African American journey, the Black journey here particularly so important, so critical at this juncture in time?
I'm going to say for me, I'm going to let Charles jump in on his own, but I married an Angelino. We live basically in a 2 square mile radius from where she grew up. And I have tried to get her to London to live. I got her on the East Coast for a little while, but every chance she gets, she wanted to come back to this place, to LA. And I had to figure out, why do you love LA? So what is it about LA that you love so much?
Yeah.
And when you understand the arc of the history, particularly of African Americans and others who come here, is they leave places like Louisiana and Texas and Georgia, and Mississippi to live freer and more abundant lives. And while LA had its issues with the color line, it's a place where you could get a good job, where you could raise your family, purchase a home. You could go to the beach, enjoy leisure activities. And that's a unique thing in America.
Yeah, that's an important story to tell. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Charles, what do you think? What's your...
Well, my life basically has been primarily in my studio. I haven't traveled that much. I do travel, but I haven't traveled that much. My goals were to create the things that were being, as a conduit, being administered to me, and those things would affect my community in ways that gave me purpose. And so LA, I mean, New York curators have come out to my studio and said, this cat's too laid back. You know, in LA, and you got the beaches and you got the movie theaters, and you got, you know, and I drive. I mean, you talk about car culture. I mean, I can't remember when I didn't have a car. So, but, you know, I just think that it's been one of my goals to empower my community, to empower people to see the beauty within themselves and also the beauty within their community, and how we can actually formulate those kinds of things as creative people, artists, and not just the people that make sculpture or paintings, but the people that make the businesses function in such a way where they serve the people and educate the people in how they can, you know, grow beyond the norm that we are just not used to dealing with monies and things like that. That's a gift.
I like to say that is the art in all of us. There's
Yes.
an art to business, there is an art to engineering and all of that. So it's all connected. So speaking of art, and going back to the core of this project, being about uplifting, celebrating, but not ignoring the economic need. A question we get all the time is why art, right? Why art in a community with such deep need for investment economically? Why are we choosing to elevate Black artists, install Black art in this community with so much other need? How would you answer that?
First of all, we look at how art has been presented in America, primarily by the European, and the African artist has been kind of in the basement for quite a while, and all the time wanting to have that same expression. I mean, the Mona Lisa's been around a long time. We have many Mona Lisas in our community that have not been expressed, and the importance of art in the community, just in that expression, brings about the person in their backyard that's making something and don't have no idea why they're doing it, but they feel so good. You know, it's a stimulant of spiritual creativity, and I think that is the subject that we really don't talk about, how natural it is and how important it is to embrace one's natural spiritual self. And that's what I've learned through the process of art, not just Black, you know, we say Black art, the Black art, because we are invested in showing how beautiful we are and how we were taught to be ugly, but we are so beautiful and have so many creative expressions. You know, and I'm on a soapbox.
No, it's like, why art? Because it validates us. We are here, the creatives are here, the artists are within this community.
You know, it does validate us. It's very spiritual. You know, there was a writer from the 18th century who wrote his memoirs. His name was Olaudah Equiano Augustus Vesa. And he was...
You gotta say that name again.
Olaudah Equiano Augustus Vesa. And he wrote in the 18th century about being captured in Africa and brought to the New World. And he talked about life. His story gives us one of the first pictures of life in Africa in the period. And he says, we understand that he's a member of the Igbo tribe in Nigeria, somewhere around that, where's modern-day Nigeria. But he writes, "We are almost a nation of poets, dancers, and singers. For everything in life is celebrated through music, dance, song, or some sort of art." Right? So when you bring that forward, art is the vehicle for social uplift in this instance, right? We want to live in communities that are beautiful, right? And we know art does this. We want to live in communities that represent us, that tell our stories, and we know art is a vehicle that can do that. We also know that art has an intrinsic value. It drives the economy, right? There's a reason why you wear that blue or you coif your hair a certain way. It all is an artistic expression, or how a building is built, or how streets are laid out. And so if we're going to tell our story, to claim space, to advance ourselves and advance our communities, then why not use art as a tool to do that, right? And in the process, not only do we tell our stories, but a lot of other people can appreciate it and can see our beauty, and can enjoy it and see themselves in it.
Yeah. Thank you both. So Larry, you have been with the project for 6.5 years?
Oh, yeah.
Since the early stage.
Yeah.
And you have first as a community advisory member, then into our lead historian, serving on the curatorial committee. So can you talk a little bit, extending on this why art conversation, talk about the choice and the importance of selecting luminaries like Charles and others from the Black LA art sector.
You know, that's a great part of the story. So we're going to have a little back and forth, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Tell a little story about this, because I think when the council member, Marquise Harris Dawson, initially came and sort of birthed this idea and brought it to the community, there were certain people who you had to engage. Some of them are here in this audience, right? You have to see those stakeholders. They are people who are so involved, not only in uplift, but the work we do as community. And this is something that has never been done before, but let's frame it where it's happening. It's happening in Los Angeles, where right now, and it's debatable, I'm willing to debate anyone, but the art capital of the United States, in my opinion, is Los Angeles now, right? No disrespect, New York, I love y'all. But there are some exciting things that are happening with galleries and artists here in LA, so that's one thing. Then we have this incredibly rich, dynamic history of African-American artists who not only have moved the canon and the discussion about Black art, if we want to use that, but American art, right? Charleston, his teacher was Charles White, right, his art teacher. You're talking about luminaries and giants of the American art movement, right? So that's one thing. But to do something as grand as Destination Crenshaw, right, something that's transformative, is both something that requires public and private cooperation and collaboration, right? But it's also something that's never been done before that people have to believe in. So we start talking about, if we're going to create these monuments in our community, who are the artists that need to be involved? What are the stories that we need to tell? We don't have a Charles White, and not long ago we had lost Outerbridge and so many others. But who are their students? Who are the ones that they taught and left an impression on? And what are the works that they left behind that we can use? So we come to people like Charles, who's been doing this work forever, who's been taking the idea of assemblage and found objects in a very LA tradition, taking the things that people cast off and discard and making them to these dynamic works of art. And we go to him and say, you've been doing public works, let's do something a little different. Let's do it in our community, the way we want to do it, how we want to do it, and the fashion we want to do it. So we talk about it, and somebody says, somebody got to go talk to Charles and see if he will do it. I said, I'll do that. I'll go talk to Charles. So I called Charles. I said, Charles, I want to come by the studio and talk to you about a project, Destination Crenshaw. We need you to be involved with it, need you to participate. And I said, I'm not going to be able to come till late. He said, well, you know what? The house and the studio is all one and the same. So whatever time you get here is when you get here. So I go to Charles's home. That's about 6.5 years ago. Yeah. Charles, take it over.
So
I was about to say,
Larry shows up, and I show him my gallery, so to speak. It was, we're in Compton, and I have this 4,500 square building that had everything that I ever made in it. And so when you walk in, it's like, ah. But Larry and I talked for maybe an hour and a half, and we wined and dined. And then Larry gets ready to, he tells me how important it is to create this image in our community that would be long lasting. He gave me all the politics stuff. And as he was leaving, he told me, he said, "We didn't have any money."
That was then.
And I said, "Larry, I believe in you. I really want to, I was hungry, okay? I wanted the brother to succeed desperately, okay? So he says, we have banking, we have things, we have possibilities, we're doing this and we're doing that." I said, "Oh man, that's fantastic. I'd love to, I'm waiting." And they showed up. And they continued to show up. In the first meeting where all the artists came together, and we were wondering, because it was done in a way that was unconventional, and we're all hungry to be a part of not just making the money, but leaving an impact within our community that would be long lasting and empowering. So Larry left, and I didn't see Larry for a while.
Well, you have been working though, and you brought your maquette with us. So
Right. Okay, now we're talking about.
Yeah.
I've signed all the contracts.
Yeah. We're here. We're here now.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was interesting the way that the whole project was developed, because Jill Monet was the one that had given me the call and says, "Charles, what's your concept?" And I said, "Well, my first concept was I was going to take and make these 3 lowrider cars at 35 feet long, and they would jump up and touch each other and make a pyramid." So I like that. So they came back, "Well, they don't have the footprint big enough to handle it. So what's your plan B?" It was that quick. So I said, let me see. Yeah, I'll put the cars on a stick, on a pole, and they'll be like a dandelion. It sounds intriguing. So they took the concept and they blew it up. There was a meeting where they said, "We like what you're doing." They put it into a computer situation, and I went to the meeting and it was up on the stage. I was like, wow, okay. So someone told me that they wanted it shorter before I got to the meeting. So I said, wow, it's going to look like a carousel. So I took one of my other icons. I took my ancestral voices, and I made a pedestal of sorts that would give it some footage, like at least 6-7 feet. But you would have these images go around, then you would see the cars. And so when I got to the meeting, they said, "No, we don't want that. We want it high." I said, "Oh, wow, okay, fine." Well, and he said, "What else do you have?" After all the conversation went on. And I said, "Well, I use these Sankofa figures as part of the icons for my work, because I'm creating a language as I create these different expressions." And they researched it, boop, popped up on the screen. And I said, "Yeah, that's it." They said, "Oh, we like that." And I said, "Well, it's not in my budget." So they said, "Well, we like it," and they expressed, "Let's take it further." And I came back with a maquette.
This is so beautiful. So the title of this is Car Culture.
Yes.
And that is also the title of this conversation. So let's get into a little bit of car culture. I have been on the project just 1 year, but in that time, I have already learned so much about the significance of the car to Black LA culture. But can you guys, from your perspective, talk about its significance, both socially, economically, artistically, on, in particular, the Crenshaw community?
I have something to say. I think Larry would be better.
No, both, anybody, yeah.
Oh, well, I've been with driving my car or cars forever. When someone, well, in my community, they saw me walking one time, they said, "Oh my God, what happened?" Because I'm always in a vehicle, primarily a truck. And for me, I mean, I'm looking at it in a very personal perspective. where currently I drive a 1993 F-250 that has become a driving, moving car culture of itself, where people customize their vehicles in such a way where they paint them in a certain way, or they add on a little piece. Well, I have added on a lot of pieces.
I wish we had an image. This car is incredible, y'all.
So I mean, my truck is a rolling, if you've seen, what is it? There's some movies about how they modify trucks and things. You know, they consider it as being like a after our apocalypse truck at this point.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah, because it has a lift gate on it. It has, I mean, the lift gate's important because I have all these stones and metal and equipment that I'm not going to pick it up, but I can put it on my lift gate, shove it in my truck. Someone hit me in the front of my truck. We all survived. But I had to get another bumper because it bent my bumper. I don't like riding around raggedy. And so I ordered a bumper, and lo and behold, this bumper came in, and this bumper added about 1.5 feet to my truck. So the guys at the tool shop said, "You got to come out and see Dickson's truck. I mean, he's got a porch on the front." So, and I wanted lights on it, so I couldn't put lights on it. So I started sculpting lights, hot fog lights, so I could see the curb, so I wouldn't run over anything in certain lighting. And it just grew when I put skirts on it. I mean, this became, it still is.
Ongoing practice.
I dubbed it as rolling sculpture now.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, or more than often now, I get the thumbs up. Guys, man, people can't understand what are the pipes coming out of it, what do they do? And so I look at it as being something that will probably end up at the Peterson Museum one day.
Nice. Right, so my background, and I want your answer, but my background, I have a background in arts education, and particularly I'm an arts integration advocate. What you described, the level of engineering, science, math in
You've
this
seen
art,
it too.
I'm just saying, the PSA, arts in schools. But let's go.
Well, you know, if they haven't seen Charles's truck, and it's still morphing, it's still developing. I don't know if it'll ever be done, right?
It will be.
Yeah.
It will be when I finally paint it.
Okay, all right. You know, we just to talk, you know, because I want to get back to also this wonderful piece that he created, but just a little bit about car culture and its importance not only to Los Angeles and to black folks. You know, I'm so happy that I have a network of people that I can call and discuss these things. And one of my dear friends is Allison Rose Jefferson. And if you haven't read her article, she wrote an article for Zócalo that talks about her family's experience of migrating to Los Angeles, and that the mechanism in which they arrived here was through the automobile, right? The car transported them from locations south or west, or, you know, those are how we arrived in Los Angeles. And when we got here, the car is what took us, you know, from Central Avenue to Watts, then to the Crenshaw district. The freedom of being able to drive out, again, to make it to the beaches, to drive out to Val Verde, to experience a different life from the urban environment. The car is just an essential aspect of the migration, right? But also, again, this idea of freedom, right?
Yeah.
The freedom of mobility is so tied to the car, but also to the black experience. When Du Bois came here, very close, very early on, you know, they take this wonderful picture in LA. And in fact, he's so enamored with LA. He talks about how the blacks in LA are the best housed blacks in America. He said, don't get me wrong, there's still a color line, but they're going to college, and they're sending their kids to college, and they have businesses, and they take a picture with all their cars lined up. The newest cars. It's a wonderful, wonderful photograph. And then you hear stories about how King would come to LA all the time, and said he's rolling up into the Baldwin Hills and he sees all these Cadillacs and Lincolns and all this stuff. And he says, surely I'm at a white church. And he walks in And it's all black people, right? Because the car has allowed them to have a great job downtown, where they work for the city or for the county, or they have a business. So this car, but it's also this thing as something that you tinker with, that not only something that fathers teach their sons or their daughters how to, to give it a nice paint job, to put some candy paint on it or some nice rims, and then they start to say, well, how do we manipulate it, right? How do we let it do an LA thing, right? How do we let it sit low, right? And show, both the artistic but the engineering behind all. And so car culture then becomes this idea again of something that not only do we have this vehicle to show off, now I can cruise, right? I can cruise down Crenshaw on Sundays, and we can shut up and we can talk about how did you do this, how did you do that, and we can start car clubs, right? And we can all wear we like a coordinated outfit together. You know that, right? All these things, when you talk about car culture, it's just such an important aspect to our experience, both historically and economically in so many ways. So we talked about that we couldn't have some work in Destination Crenshaw that didn't represent how important car and mobility was. As we thought about, if you know Lamert Park, where the road sort of, you go Lamert Boulevard takes you off, and the Crenshaw and Virgin, we said there has to be something that sits right there that lets you know that one, this is a uniquely black neighborhood, right? And that the automobile is so important to us in so many ways. So Charles's work, when he came up with these Sankofa models that he uses in his work and so many iterations, and these car on top of it, and how it is, you initially had, this is what the early maquette, right? But that design has changed a little bit,
yeah.
Based on how you see how the car is going to be for us in the future. Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah.
Cars in the future. There's a series of vehicles I picked out that represent some of the older cars, some of the up to a point where you see a lot of lowriders take these cars and embrace them and then do custom things to them. And I thought that was very important to include in the work. But we started from the ancient and then went into the current, and then there's a piece that fits on top. Instead of just the motor, we wanted to transform that thought to future ways that these vehicles will be moving around in our space. And that was, we went into crystals, we went into new technologies. So it took the shape, unlike a motor, it took it into more of a Star Trek element. So there's crystals being embedded in this top form, our motorized possibility. And there's also running from their heads up through to the top, fiber optic cable, which represents that connection from our ancient beginnings to our futuristic possibility. Now, one thing about cars that really has become a very prominent thing within our society is that it has lended itself to be the sculptor, to be the painter, to be the technologist that goes into making this thing so personal and so out there to where, we're sharing and we're caring about, well, hey, man, you can get it over here. Backup cameras are standard now. I have one in my truck. So, I mean, it's just one of those things that has brought together cultures. The Latino culture has certain types of paint. You can leave it to the brothers that have big, giant wheels. I realize that I think it's Texas or somewhere, they have extensions on their wheels that come out that far. And they drive around like that. I mean, it's like a Roman chariot. So, I mean, and it's legal. So.
It's Texas.
Is that what? But the expression of the vehicle in our society has grown so much. And the empowerment to say, this is mine, I did this thing to it, and someone that's into, and where most of us are into it. I always, when I went to teach at grade schools, I would always tell them that the automobile was a rolling sculpture. It's all sculpture, but it's utilitarian. It has wheels. Now it has become more of a fact than ever, because now we have hypercars, we have electric hypercars, we have hovering cars. I mean, we have come into a whole new understanding of transportation, and the car culture is one of those driven factors.
Yeah.
I want to ask a quick question because, you know, Dominique, we took this wonderful picture of John Outerbridge and his bug. Can you talk just a little bit about, you know, the luminary artist John Outerbridge and his love for tinkering with the car as well as a fellow artist?
You know, John Outerbridge was an incredible creative individual, and there were times when I needed a car. I would say, John, what you got? He would let me drive around one of his Jeep convertibles. The police would stop me just because they wanted to see what that car looked like. And I was like, what? They said, man, this car is great. This is a nice car. And they would ask questions about the car. I had nothing, you know. It's a friend of mine's. And he's doing some electrical work on it. But John was doing flare wheels, and he was a collector of some really nice vehicles.
Wow.
We had a thing about adding elements to our cars, just beside paint, where John would do a flare wheel, and he would build that bad boy out with the type of things that come off of popsicles. I was like, really, John? That's pretty deep. But he would build it out in such a way where it'd hold it in place, then he would put some fiberglass over it.
Wow.
He did that to a little English Ford. It was really nice. And then he got into collecting Volkswagens. And he would strip them down and paint them up and add stuff to them, and really, you know, he was just an inspirational person in his collection. But he really let me drive his stuff, so.
Yeah.
I
love that. Like the themes that I'm hearing is just freedom of expression, just freedom of mobility.
Yeah.
And then Charles, like what you're describing, so your piece, Car Culture, is going to be featured in Destination Crenshaw's Sankofa Park.
Yeah.
And I think that your process, your practice embodies that idea of Sankofa, even what you're describing. Like we've lost John Outerbridge, we've lost Charles White, but you hold on and carry elements of them into your work now.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, what's the legacy that you want to leave moving forward?
The legacy, you know, that, the whole process was part of the legacy of letting the community that's coming in realize that we were here. We were culturally viable, and we're leaving a mark. That whole strip was basically where cars were sold.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's important that others see the possibility of doing the same. There's always room for new creative possibilities to be put into the community. This project, I think, will give support to those future projects. And also, there's some education that comes from knowing people like myself that I'm at a point now in my career where I want to share my knowledge to as many as I can. You don't have to accept everything, but there's a piece of something you may want to take and grow with. And, you know, even with the AI thing that we're dealing with right now, there's always room for that hands-on, and there's more that I would like to share. There are recipes that we did back in the 60s, 70s that I am bringing back to my work because it represented this grassroots understanding of materials and how things work. And so I think that's very important now that we can go on a computer. And I use a computer. I use three-dimensional printers and things like that. All that stuff lends itself to these new possibilities. But then there's the old grassroots possibilities of a hammer and nail. Now, I did a project with John Outerbridge called Oh Speak Speak, and he worked in my Compton studio, which he actually had turned me on to at the time, working with Communicative Arts Academy. So, long story short, John hired me to do a project. I wanted a grinder. John paid me to do a grinder, and I still have it today. But John's have a paintbrush, a tack hammer, and a saw. And he did a whole panel that was like 18 feet tall. I had my grinder, my saw, and all kinds of equipment. And I mean, it was just amazing to see someone do something so simple but so dynamic, you know? And I was still grinding on my piece as we were installing. But, you know, he was at the time he could pick a color, and he would blend colors that, you know, you just couldn't imagine them to exist. And the dynamics of what he was doing was one that, you know, should have been taught more in our community, but I'm the one that was a recipient of that. And also a person like Noah Purifoy. I mean, we were all good friends, including, I mean, the list goes on. That whole black movement in the 70s.
I think it's weird.
And Elliot Pinckney was one in Compton that Elliot made his own clothes, but Elliot worked with resins and paint. He was just prolific. He painted murals all over the city.
Yeah.
And Elliot, speaking of public art, we were always waiting. Well, where you know, they want something done. Where is it? You know, so public art has been the way that I have projected my work. John Outerbridge projected his work similar, but he ended up doing things for more gallery work. But there's a film on his piece that is very, very dynamic. I was with John, helped to dig the foundation for that.
I think just such a richness of the history lives with you. So before we get into some audience questions, I have one more question for you. Like, what's inspiring? You talk so much about how deeply inspired and motivated you were by the artists and the iconic artists that informed you. What's inspired about the younger artists and creatives that you've been working with? What's inspiring to you about working with them?
Oh, they're wanting to know how things work. It's interesting. I mean, interesting with the fact that some processes they have never seen. I mean, simple things that are very grassroots, like I'm making some candles. So I'm melting wax and putting color into and I'm pouring it into a mold, and an artist asked me, well, what's that blue stuff you're pouring into the mold? I said, that's wax. You know, that's wax. I'm making a candle. Really? Oh, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So something as simple as that and back to John Outerbridge. John had a technique where he would take acid core solder and leather and some other tin, and it would look like when he finished that he welded the leather to the metal. It would blow people's mind every time. And the only problem with this technique was that you had to wear a mask to keep from getting poisoned.
Imagine.
John got skin poisoning from doing that because he didn't wear a mask. And you see pictures of John bald-headed, that's what happened.
Okay.
But it all cleared up. There's a wonderful Dr. James Hobbs, who collected John's work, who also was collects my work as a fantastic collector and backer. I'm going off, but
You're fine.
that's what
we're here.
It's important for me to share 69 plus years of what I care about, and I just want people to be excited about why I'm excited, and in making a mold. I'm working with a young artist right now who works in textile. I want him to show me how to sew some stuff. I've sewn in the past, but to work with an industrial sewing machine like John did, I want to know how to do that. And so I think it's all hands on deck right now to carry on this legacy of creativity, because when we transition, we want to leave something that continues on, not so much in just the memory of how wonderful the work looks, but how wonderful the gifts are that were given to share this information, so that you see new things come out of that. That warehouse or that studio has not been broken down, and we're not starting from scratch again, but we're moving forward with this energy. There is a group in Europe, I think, called the House of Bauhaus, and designers got together and made history by creating things that had not been possibly designed. That instead of traditional things, they took and stretched them out. So it's the same thing here. I mean, I have working with all kinds of rusty metals and nuts and bolts and resins, and just working outside the envelope and coming up with something new. His puff was part of that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We've got some eager audience members and their questions, so
okay.
You probably are answering a lot of them, but I want to give them an opportunity to share their questions before we lose all of this richness. Is that coming? Oh.
Natasha from Destination Crenshaw will be joining us on stage as well. So our first question is for Larry. In 100 years, what would you like historians to say about Destination Crenshaw?
In 100 years, what would I like historians to say about Destination Crenshaw? I think the process on how this idea came to life and emerged is extremely important, right? The journey is just as important as the final project. The final project will have luminary artists and space for artists that will continue to create. But this is a project that it really developed from this idea that the council member had, the community came together, and their collective strength and work made it happen. Whether it's from PR and marketing to working with artists. It's a wonderful public and private partnership that couldn't happen both on a policy side, but also on a fundraising and financial side, and that has to continue. So this is something that hasn't happened in the United States. It is a case study that I want people to say that they did something extraordinary here, that black folks and their allies and others within their community got together to stamp a space that was so unique that it provided a model for the entire world.
Yeah.
That's good.
Our next online question is for Charles. The first part of your piece, the Sankofa figures, was installed last month at Sankofa Park. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was a wonderful experience. I had seen the work earlier in Oscar Rowe's studio, and he's a fantastic fabricator. What you don't see, and I'm kind of going off, but I'm going to answer that, is that the structures that were inside of the thing are so technical for the strength of the figures. All that work was done when I saw the pieces last. To finally see them roll out after 6.5 years of waiting for, after I've done my modeling and stuff, was an incredible, just like they were alive. When the crane picked them up, it was like they were living, it's a living entity. It's kind of like a moment you had to pinch yourself, and that's just half of it. So there's another section coming in where there's the tress itself, and the cars that go into the Tress, and then call it the cherry on the top. I mean, it's really a unique opportunity as well as a unique piece of sculpture. I've done a lot of public art things, but I think that it's pretty much the pinnacle of what I've done so far.
Charles, we talked about that this work will slow people down when they see it on that merch. It will actually, they will want to see what it actually is.
I have slowed down.
Which is a good thing we put a traffic stop.
Yes.
I have slowed down. I mean, you see it from quite a distance. It has like a little curve in the roadway, but when you get in alignment with that, you can see it for at least a half mile. And that's just half of it.
And that's just now, like it's
So when you get
magnificent
the next 8 or 9 feet, it's going to be very visible.
Our next question is for Charles. What would you say to aspiring artists who want to break into the field? Where and how should they start?
Break into the field of art. I won't ask the question with a question. I would just say follow your heart, be honest, work out of joy, do the things that just come naturally to you, and then ask questions. Don't feel like what you're doing is so secretive where you can't invite other possibilities in to see what you're looking at, because that's where you get that dual conversation, and you realize that, oh wow, I was working on that, didn't know it was a stop. So that was what was so wonderful about working with John and Noah and Bill Paggio and all these people, that we all kind of collaborated with just conversation. We didn't necessarily, there was no competition, and there shouldn't be any competition. It should be just our creative, spiritual expressions of who we are and where we want to be and what we have experienced. So yeah, I just, sharing, I've been kicked out of studio spaces just because I said, if there you get fit, are you a student here? No, but you have to leave. So, I mean, sharing is very important. The ego, you got to drop that, because you're working out of fear and not out of truth.
Collective discovery is so important. I love that.
Our next online question: Destination Crenshaw is designed as a reparative, community-oriented project to push against gentrification. Amazing. What are some indicators and community benefits that will be measured after construction is completed?
I think that's for us. You got it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, actually. That is a really good question. We talk about the reparative framework as part of the healing, right? The healing for our community. That's why the parks look the way they do, with the intentionality of the different shade structures that we have, the art, the landscaping. It is to give residents, community, a place to sit, a place to enjoy art, a place to be shaded under intentional covering with the shade structures, to be able to enjoy the space that they're in. While on a main thoroughfare, which is Crenshaw Boulevard, you're kind of apart from that, but still in community, being able to take that moment for yourself and then also to enjoy this green space. So the measurement of that will be our community members being able to utilize the park, the different kinds of programming that we will have. Heather can talk a little bit more about the collections care program, where we will intentionally take care of the art and the green spaces. That's our part of our workforce development that will come from our community. So these are ways that we are taking care of this space in our community.
Yeah, and just to add to that, to build on the collections care element, part of a measure would be economic development. So really pouring into workforce development, supporting community members to enter into the idea of collections care as a viable career path. We like to say Black art made by Black artists, cared for by Black people, by the community. In addition to this, once the park and the experience, this 1.3-mile experience is open, it will be an invitation to the world, and an invitation for more economic development of our local historic legacy businesses in the community.
I think that's a point that could you speak to a little bit more, because Crenshaw was once a very, very thriving economic district.
Yeah.
We still have legacy buildings there, so we want to uplift those, but also see more Black businesses and others to the core. Can you speak to that?
I mean, you spoke to it. That's exactly our mission. Like we have been intentionally working with the current businesses, but we're working with emerging entrepreneurs and nonprofits without brick and mortar spaces. There's a lot of space on the boulevard for us to reinvigorate, revitalize with all of this energy, this creativity that exists. The Crenshaw community, the Crenshaw district right now is contributing the majority to the creative economy of LA, which means it's coming out of the Crenshaw district. And that means it's going to Hollywood or to the West Side or somewhere else. This initiative and this project is encouraging that it stays and gets cycled back through our community.
Our next question is for Heather. How does someone become a Destination Crenshaw artist? Are there opportunities for artists with less experience than Charles Dickson?
Wait, answer that again. I was laughing in my mind because sorry.
How does someone become a Destination Crenshaw artist? Are there opportunities for artists with less experience than Charles Dickson?
Absolutely, and so Tasha was kind of alluding to that. So one of my charges when I came on board about a year ago was the creation of our DC Arts Corps program, which Collections Care is one of. But we have 4 other projects within them: our Artist Showcase, our mural projects, oh God, I'm forgetting one. Artist Showcase, mural projects, exhibition and design. So this is an outdoor museum, which will, and when you think of the museums that you go into, you see, you walk in and you'll, in addition to the sculptures or the art you see, there is writing, there might be poetry, there might be digital artwork. So all of those are opportunities for engaging artists from all levels. And that's our intention. And you can apply through our RFQ system on our website. RFQ, request for qualification. So once you submit that, you become a part of our database. I know you, I look through it, and as soon as we have an opportunity within one of those projects, and if you're eligible, if you're qualified, you will get probably invited to apply.
And if I could just add, there's also our creative pathways. Our Creative Pathways program. It's led by, on our team, on partnerships and grants, but it is to engage artists with different opportunities. And we have our office hours every last Thursday of the month from 3 to 5 at our offices. So if you're interested, you can definitely check us out on our website. But you can also get in touch with me or Taylor Jeffrey, who is leading that as the Creative Pathways Workforce Specialist. It is really about connecting artists and other creatives to opportunities that they might not know of. So we gather that information as trusted partners with these other institutions to be able to walk you through an RFP process like Heather mentioned, so that you feel more comfortable. We're also there to provide you with other tools and resources. We have our artist package, showcase package, so you have the support that you need. It is not one size fits all. We are really trying to meet artists where they are and other creatives where they are. So they can get to the level of Charles Dickson and others, right? So that kind of creativity stays in our community, but we are also able to share that with the world. So we have many different opportunities for where artists are, and we take that relationship very seriously.
Mm-hmm. So this is the last question we have time for, but what are the next steps or events regarding this project?
The next steps is completing construction and opening it. So installing all of the artworks, getting our murals up, completing the construction in the parks, and opening up.
And along with our office hours, as I mentioned, for our creative pathways workforce. So building that bridge with community, but our main focus is opening so
Yeah.
that we can enjoy car culture.
Yeah. And just as a note, shameless plug, the RFQ is open right now because we do have several mural and exhibition design opportunities, so please submit. Oh, well, I think that's our time. Sorry, I have the closing notes. So I want to thank Zócalo Public Square and my colleagues at Destination Crenshaw, my panelists. Thank you all for supporting tonight's program. A special thanks to Supervisor Holly Mitchell and Akieva and Martin Jacobs for their generous support. You'll be able to find a summary of tonight's program on Zócalo's website next week, as well as interviews from our guests. And if you're not already, please subscribe to the Zócalo newsletter, podcast, social media for more great conversations like this. If you're here with us in person, we encourage you to join us for our post-production reception with food bites and some drinks and music by DJ Case. That's it. Thank you all. Sorry, DJ KC. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.